Welcome to another video lecture by Utkalp Digital Classes. I am your tutor Raghav Chaturvedi, and today we are going to study capacitance. The important topics that I'll touch upon include the basics of capacitance, redistribution of charges, types of capacitors, combination of capacitors, capacitors with dielectrics, force on a dielectric inside a capacitor, and charging and discharging of a capacitor. We start our discussion by talking about some basic concepts. First of all, we start with the definition of capacitance. Capacitance of a conductor is a measure of the ability of the conductor to store charge on it. What this actually means is when you start giving a conductor some charge, its potential starts to rise. This increase in potential will be directly proportional to the charge that has been given, and the constant of proportionality will be known as the capacitance. So this is the formal definition of capacitance. Then there are capacitance of various conductors that are available, and you can find for each conductor a value of the capacitance, which will depend on the size and shape of the conductor, the surrounding medium, and presence of other conductors nearby. So as an example, let's look at the capacitance of a spherical conductor. So if you place a isolated spherical conductor and give a charge Q to it, its potential starts to rise. Now in the chapter on electrostatics, we clearly saw that the potential is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q by R. So by the definition of capacitance, we can easily see that the capacitance is given by 4 pi epsilon naught into R. That is, capacitance is proportional to the radius of the sphere. Okay, this should be remembered, as we will be seeing some applications of these in the future. Also, you should see that the capacitance changes when you place the system in a medium, okay, because the value of epsilon naught changes to epsilon. Next, I'll just mention what is a capacitor. So capacitor is also known as a condenser in some literature. So in a capacitor, what you do is you just have two parallel plates. Okay, this is the general capacitor that has been studied. So it's a pair of conductors of opposite charges. So you give a plus sigma to one, minus sigma to the other one. Okay, and what you do is basically you design these things so that a lot of charge can be accommodated on these systems. Okay, what happens is you start to charge one of the capacitors, and then that induces opposite charge in the other one, and this leads to the potential difference between them, and that is the whole principle behind the capacitance. Let's look at the energetics of capacitance. So I have given the potential energy of a capacitance is nothing but Q square by 2C is equal to half CV square is equal to half QV. You should take a note of this. You can derive these on your own. And how do these things work? So let's see with the capacitance of the conductor. When you connect this to a battery, it charges to a potential V from zero potential. Now if I keep giving a charge Q at that time, then my Q becomes CV. That is, if Q is the charge on the conductor, so we can write Q as CV. Now if the battery supplies small amount of charge dQ to the conductor, okay, so you have the conductor already and the battery keeps providing a charge dQ to the conductor at a constant potential V. Okay, then some small amount of work will be done by the battery against the force that is also already existing due to the charge present. Okay, so when you do this, basically when you try to find the work done as V dQ, okay, and you try to find it using the integral 0 to last charge as capital Q, you find that work done is nothing but Q square by 2C. So it's basically work done in adding extra charge to your capacitor, which is presented here. One key point that you should notice, the potential of earth is assumed to be zero, so the capacity of earth or a conductor which is connected to the earth will be infinite. So if I connect my conductor to the earth, the capacitance goes to infinity. The capacitors when present in circuits will be represented by one of these diagrams. Next, let's quickly review the redistribution of charges and loss of energy. So when you take two charged conductors and connect them using a conducting wire, for example, I've connected them here. If you connect them using a conducting wire, then the charge will flow from a conductor at a higher potential to the one at a lower potential. This flow of charge will stop when the potential of both the conductors becomes equal. So in the previous chapter as well, I was telling you about this. If you have two conductors and then you connect them, then what happens is the potential of both of them becomes same. And how does this become the same or take the same value? That is due to flow of charges or redistribution of charges between them. So now we'll just look at it again. The potential before connection of the two will be V1 and V2, and we give them a charge capital Q1 and capital Q2, while the capacitances be C1 and C2. Okay, then what you do is you connect these two, and what changes? Both of them acquire the same potential V, common potential. Okay, and the charges on both of them change. Note that the capacitance remains the same. It depends on several factors, but most of them are related to the size of the object. So we have the potential V and the new charges Q1 prime and Q2 prime. How do you find these? First of all, according to the law of conservation of charge, Q before connection is equal to Q after connection. Now because Q is given as CV, C into V, I can easily say that C1 V1 plus C2 V2 is equal to C1 V plus C2 V. Okay, this is one of my defining equations for this, and I can thus easily write that the common potential is nothing but C1 V1 plus C2 V2 by C1 plus C2. Okay, then you can easily find the charges that are there after connection. So how do you calculate the charge? The charge on the first one is nothing but the capacitance times the common potential. So all you have to do is first just find the common potential and then multiply it with the capacitance. You will get the charge on the new charge on the first one. Similarly for the second sphere or second conductor, it's C2 into V, where V is the common potential. You can easily find the charges. Now if I took the case of spherical conductors, as you already saw what the capacitance looks like for them. So if I just substitute the value of capacitance for these from this expression here, then I can easily write that Q1, the redistributed charge Q1 prime by Q2 prime is equal to R1 by R2. Okay, so the ratio of distribution of charges is the ratio of the radii of the two spheres. So you should also keep this in mind. The next thing that you should take a look at, there is always a loss of energy when this redistribution takes place. And why is it so? When charge is flowing through the conducting wire, then some energy will be lost, mainly due to the count of the Joule effect. Okay, so the electrical energy will be converted into some heat energy, and thus the energy of the system will reduce. And how do you calculate how much is the reduction? You basically find U final minus U initial. Now what is U final? As the energy was given as half CV square, right? So you calculate the energy for the first sphere after the connection, second sphere after connection, first sphere before connection, second sphere before connection. If you just do the basic algebra, you find that it takes the value delta U is equal to minus half C1 C2 by C1 plus C2 into V1 minus V2 square. You don't necessarily need to remember this, you can easily derive it in the paper as well. So yeah, as it does not take much time. Next, let's quickly take a look at the different types of capacitors. The first one is the parallel plate capacitor. As the name suggests, it consists of two parallel plates. Okay, both are metallic plates. We charge one to a positive charge as plus sigma. The other plate is given a charge of minus sigma, and let epsilon r be the dielectric constant of the material medium in which this capacitor exists. So the basics of the capacitor are quite simple. Let the distance between the two plates be given by d, and let the area be given by a. Okay, then there are basically just three steps to finding the capacitance. The first step involves you to find the electrical field inside the capacitor. So what is it? Because these are just parallel metallic plates, so you have your E can be written as E plus plus E minus, which is nothing but sigma by 2 epsilon naught due to the positive plate, and sigma by 2 epsilon naught due to the negative plate, which is nothing but sigma by epsilon naught. Or if it's in a medium, you'll have that is nothing but sigma by epsilon naught epsilon r. This is fairly simple. Then you need to find the potential difference. So potential difference is nothing but E dot dr. Here the length is d, so V is equal to E times d. Okay, and if you do so, you can easily find that the capacitance for the system is nothing but, or like it's already I've mentioned it here, the capacitance is nothing but epsilon r epsilon naught A by d. Or if you're just considering the a vacuum as the medium, so this is generally known as a epsilon naught a epsilon naught by d. Okay, so you should always remember this. The next thing that you should remember is the force between the plates. So how do you find the force between the plates? First of all, the electric field due to the positive plate is what it's given by sigma by 2 epsilon naught. To find the force on the negative plate or the negative charge, which is minus q on this plate, let's say, so that force is given by q square by 2 epsilon naught into a, because force is equal to minus q times E, and we know the E that is given to you, so you easily find the magnitude of the force, and you can also write it as half epsilon naught AE square. Okay, this is a common question that generally comes in the paper. Using these two formulas, they ask you to find something, so I think it will be better if you just make a note of these. Next, we'll just talk about spherical capacitor. So what actually happens in a spherical capacitor, there are two metallic spheres. One is the inner sphere, one is the outer sphere, and what you do is you provide a charge q to the inner sphere, and it is uniformly distributed on its surface, and you provide a charge minus q, or you don't actually provide a charge, minus q charge is induced on the inner surface of the outer sphere, as I already mentioned in the chapter on electrostats. So the charge plus q induced on the outer surface of the outer sphere flows to earth as it is grounded. So you should take a note. This outer surface will have a positive charge, but this will flow down to the earth. Okay. Now, how do you find the capacitance of the system? First of all, you need to find the potential of the inner sphere. So let me just write down the potential of the inner sphere. let potential of the inner sphere be V1 is equal to V potential of the inner sphere due to charges on the inner sphere plus potential of inner sphere due to charges on the outer sphere. If I just write this down, it's quite trivial. Q by 4 pi epsilon naught R1 plus minus Q by 4 pi epsilon naught R2, which basically gives you the value Q times R2 minus R1 by R1 R2. Okay, now that you have the potential on V1 and you know that the outer surface is earthed, so potential of V2 is equal to 0. This potential 0. So in order to find the capacitance of any system, you should just remember that you need to find the potential difference across some length, and then you need to find the net charge stored, and then you easily get the capacitance. And how does this help in our cause? In this case, we can easily see that the potential difference, or delta V, is equal to V1 minus V2 between the two plates. It's nothing but Q by 4 pi epsilon naught R2 minus R1 by R2 minus R1 by R1 R2. With this out of the question, you can easily write your capacitance as Q by V, which turns out to be 4 pi epsilon naught into R1 R2 divided by R1 minus R2. Okay, so this is the first result, and I think you should make a note of this because this has been asked in the papers before. The next case is that of the inner surface being earthed. Okay, so what happens here is, here the system is equivalent to a spherical capacitor of inner and outer radii as R1 and R2, and the spherical conductor of radius R2 in parallel. Whenever you're given a question in which the inner surface is earthed, okay, it can be assumed to be a combination of two systems. The first one, which is basically a spherical capacitor, which we already discussed above, and a spherical conductor of radius R2 in parallel. And how does this work? First of all, let me find the charge on the inner side. So the charge on the inner side, which is basically Q prime, that I've given this charge. So Q prime is nothing but R1 by R2 into Q. And if you want to find the charge on the outer side, it is nothing but Q minus R1 by R2 into Q, which turns out to be R2 minus R1 by R2 into Q. Okay, so in order to find the total capacitance of the system, total capacitance is nothing but 4 pi epsilon naught into R1 R2 by R2 minus R1 plus 4 pi epsilon naught R2, because it's in parallel. This gives us the value of capacitance as 4 pi epsilon naught R2 square by R2 minus R1. So you should also make a note of this. What this equivalently means is, what this entire structure equivalently means is, you can make a short notation of this. So it's basically, you have a spherical capacitor and you're adding to it a spherical conductor of, say, radius R2. Okay, and here you can easily see that the outer surface has a charge Q prime, the inner one has a charge minus Q prime. Okay, and this has a charge q minus q prime. This is because we have earthed the inner surface. So what happens inside? Inside positive and negative charges are equal. You should always keep this in mind. Let's look at the case of the cylindrical capacitor. For the cylindrical capacitor, when a charge q is given to the inner cylinder, it is uniformly distributed on its surface. Due to this, a charge minus q will be induced on the inner surface of the outer cylinder. Now the charge plus q induced on the outer surface of the outer cylinder flows to earth as it is grounded. Okay, so I'll again show you how to find the capacitance of this. I'm giving you the basic procedure because these can easily be derived in the paper as well. These do not take that much time. So you already know that electrical field between cylinders is given by lambda by 2 pi epsilon naught r is nothing but q by l by 2 pi epsilon naught r. Okay, now to find the potential difference between the plates, V is what? It's E dot integral of E dot dl. So you have integral from r1 to r2 of the same value 2 pi epsilon naught r l dr, which turns out to be q by 2 pi epsilon naught l ll r2 by r1. Okay, given these two, you can easily find the capacitance is equal to q by v, which turns out to be 2 pi epsilon naught epsilon r l by log base e r2 by r1. So no need to remember these things, you can easily derive them. What is the general procedure of derivation? You first find the electrical field between the two plates. Next, using the formula V is equal to E dot dr, you can easily find the potential, and then you can easily find the capacitance as q by v. So it's a three-step process. Next, let's quickly take a look at the combination of capacitors. So when you arrange the capacitors in series in a circuit, the charge has no alternative paths to flow. Thus, the charge on each capacitor is equal. So for the series, you should remember that Q on each capacitor is equal. Once this is in your mind, then it's very easy to find the total potential difference across the two endpoints, let's say A and B. Okay, and it's basically your potential drops V1 plus V2 plus V3. Using these, you can easily find that for a series combination, my 1 by C equivalent is equal to 1 by C1 plus 1 by C2 plus 1 by C3. Note, this is how the resistance is added in parallel. For the capacitance case, you just use the analogy and inverse the case. Okay. Similarly, for the parallel combination, what we have is in this arrangement, the charge has an alternative path to flow, right? So the potential difference across each capacitor is same in this case. So V across each capacitor is the same. With this in mind, what is shared is the net charge Q. So for the case of parallel combination, you have Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3. Whereas for the series, you had V is equal to V1 plus V2 plus V3. Okay, so here the voltages were being split. In this case, the charges are being split. What you should remember is the equation for the parallel combination. I'll mark this in another color. So these equations can easily give you a way to find the equivalent capacitance given any combination of the capacitors. The next question that we look at is a capacitance of 2 microfarad is required in an electrical circuit across a potential difference of 1 kilovolts. A large number of 1 microfarad capacitors are available which can withstand a potential difference of not more than 300 volts. Then we are required to find the minimum number of capacitors that can achieve this task. Okay, so how do I approach this question? To hold a 1 kilovolt potential difference, a minimum of 4 capacitors are required in series. Okay, so C1 is equal to 1 by 4 for 1 series. So for C equivalent to be 2 microfarad, okay, I will be requiring 8 parallel combinations. What this means is, if I draw the circuit diagram for this, I have the battery, and then I have my capacitors, and then I have the same thing in parallel, and the same thing again and again. Okay, so with the minimum number of capacitors that will be required is, this will be 8 times in parallel. So the number of capacitors is 8 into 4 is equal to 32. Let's look at a question. A combination of capacitors is set up as shown in the figure. The magnitude of the electric field due to a point charge Q having a charge equal to the sum of the charges on the 4 microfarad and 9 microfarad capacitors at a point 30 meters from it would be what? So basically they want us to find the charges on the different capacitor plates. How do we do that? Let me just zoom in into the figure and write down the different terminals. I'll just mark them A, B, C, D, E. It's not required. You have E, F, G, H, I, and J. Now let's just quickly see how this happens. So the potential drop across AB is equal to 8 volts. That is why that implies the potential drop across JC is also 8 volts. Now Q is equal to C times V, right? So in order to find the Q in the let me talk about the JC. Let me talk about JC. So in JC, my charge is equal to capacitance is 2 microfarad into voltage is 8. Okay, this turns out to be 16 micro C mu C. Okay, so I can easily write this as my charge as plus 16 here and minus 16 here. So we found the charge on the 2 microfarad case, but we are supposed to find it on the 4 microfarad case and the 9 microfarad case. So let's move to the chord ID. Okay, let's move to ID. Now ID has a 4 microfarad case, and it has a 3 and 9 in parallel. So because 3 and 9 are in parallel, you can use the formula for capacitance in parallel, and you find that this is equivalent to a 12 microfarad in series with the 4 microfarad. Okay, now the potential drop across ID is again how much? 8 volts. So let the potential drop across this be V1, this be V2. So we have V1 plus V2 is equal to 8 volts. Okay, and this you should also note that given the capacitances of both of them, I can just add the capacitance together, which will give me 16. Two resistances are in series, so sorry, two capacitances are in series. So what will be the equivalent capacitance? 1 by C is equal to 1 by 4 plus 1 by 12. Okay, which is nothing but 3 by 12 plus 1 by 12 is equal to 4 by 12, which is nothing but 1 by 3. So my C equivalent turns out to be 3 microfarad. Now the charge in the circuit is C into V is equal to 3 into 8 is equal to 24. Now when capacitances are in series, they have the same charges, so I can just go back and mark the different charges that are there. Let's go. Okay, sorry for that. Let me go and mark this again. So this turns out to be 24 plus 24, all are in mu C. This is minus 24. Okay, and now how will the charge distribute here? You already know how to split charge when the potential has been given to you. So the charge is split as 6, minus 6, 18 and minus 18. Now the charge that we wanted to find was the sum of charges on the 4 microfarad and 9 microfarad case. So my Q is nothing but 24 plus 18 is equal to 42 mu C. Now we need to find the electrical field due to this. Nothing but KQ by R square. You just substitute the values. 9 into 10 to the power 9 into 42 see divided by what is the radius given at 30 meters. So the radius is 30. This turns out to be 420 Newton per coulomb, which is the fourth answer. Next, let's talk about a capacitor with dielectrics. So the insulators in which microscopic local displacements of charges take place in the presence of an electric field are known as dielectrics. Similarly, you have something known as the dielectric strength, which is defined as the maximum value of electric field that a dielectric can tolerate without breakdown. Now dielectrics are basically non-conductors up to a certain value, and then after that value they'll lose their insulating property and they start to conduct. Dielectrics can be of two types. One is the polar dielectrics, and you can have the non-polar dielectric. Similarly, you can define a quantity which is known as polarization, which is capital P. It's a vector quantity, and it basically describes the extent to which your molecules of the dielectric become polarized by an electric field. How is it defined? It's basically the dipole moment per unit volume of the dielectric. Okay, you can write this as n times P, where n is the number of atoms per unit volume. Okay, what you should remember from this is due to a dielectric there is some induced surface charge densities inside the capacitor. Now let's actually see what happens for a dielectric. Without going into much detail, uh, let's look at the consequences of this. First of all, we consider the first case, which is that of in a capacitor which is partially filled with the dielectric. So in this case, the formula for my capacitance becomes epsilon naught A by D minus T plus T divided by K. Okay, this is a very important formula, and I will not go into the derivation of the entire formula, but what you should remember is its special cases are often asked in the paper. For example, what are the different things here? Here D is equal to distance between capacitor plates. A is the area of the capacitor plates. Now what is T? T is basically the thickness of the dielectric which has been inserted inside your capacitors. So this is your dielectric material. Inside the dielectric material, your electrical field changes. It becomes epsilon naught by E naught by epsilon r. You should also know that your relative permittivity K, which is nothing but ER, is E naught by E, where E naught is in vacuum, E is in a material medium, is equal to V naught by V is equal to C by C naught. Okay, take a note of this. So let's return back to our formula. I'll mark this as the equation number 1, and there are two special cases of this. In the first special case, what they do is the medium is fully present between the space. Okay, when fully present, that implies case when the thickness of the dielectric is equal to the entire length, T is equal to D. So what will happen? My C will become epsilon naught epsilon r A by D. Okay. The next case that is generally asked is if capacitor is partially filled by a conducting slab. Okay, if it's partially filled, then for a conductor, you know that for a conducting slab instead of a normal dielectric slab. So for a conducting slab, the epsilon r is equal to infinity. You should make a note of this point. So if you just apply this to my most general formula, I see that when you insert a conducting slab, my capacitance becomes epsilon naught A divided by D minus T. Okay, this is one form of finding the capacitance, and this formula will be quite useful to you. The next type of problems that generally arise are when you divide the distance and area of the dielectric, or basically your dielectrics are present in such a fashion that they uh, divide the area and distance A and D of your capacitance. Okay, so let's talk about the first case, which is known as distance division. In this case, the distance is divided and the area remains the same. What this is equivalent to, let me just mark these in normal terms. This be K1, this be K2. Okay, or epsilon R1, epsilon R2. So you have two dielectric slabs between your capacitor plates A and B. Okay, and their lengths are D1, D2, and the entire length is D. So what do these correspond to? These correspond to capacitors that are present in series. Okay, so we already know that if capacitances are present in series, then you can find the equivalent capacitance as 1 by C is equal to 1 by C1 plus 1 by C2. So C1 is nothing but K times epsilon naught A by D1. C2 is nothing but K2 epsilon naught A by D2. Okay, and using this you can easily find the net capacitance of the system. Okay, there can be special cases where D1 is equal to D2 is equal to D by 2, but all the special cases come under the general thing, that is if you divide the distance, then the capacitors are basically in series, and we already know how to find the equivalent capacitance. Next is the division of the area. You can note that here the distance remains the same. In this case, the two capacitances are in parallel. And how do you add capacitance when they are in parallel? Your effective capacitance is nothing but C1 plus C2. So what is the capacitance for C1? For C1 I can easily write it's K1. I'm writing this as K1, this as K2. Okay, so C1 is equal to K1 into A1 divided by D, and C2 is equal to K2 K2 epsilon naught A2 by D, and then you just add them in series and get the answer. Now let's look at another thing which is quite common. Generally questions are asked from this topic, so it will be beneficial for us to learn about it. So it's force on dielectric in a capacitor. Now what we consider here is a differential displacement dx of the dielectric, as I've shown you in the figure. Okay, so what happens here is that there is a net force acting on it as the dielectric is moved into or out of the capacitor. Okay, so if I exert a force by an external agent, then the work done by that force is equal to negative of the work done by electrostatic forces. That implies work done is equal to delta U. That implies minus F dot dx. Okay, minus F dot dx is equal to Q square by 2 d of 1 by C, which implies minus F dot dx is equal to minus Q square by 2 C square dc, or if my F is nothing but Q square by 2 C square dc by dx, which I have mentioned here. So you should make a quick note of this. My force can also be written as half v square into dc by dx. Okay, because q square by c square is nothing but v. Q by c is equal to v. Let's look at a question. A parallel plate capacitor is made of two circular plates separated by a distance of 5 mm with a dielectric constant 2.2 between them. When the electric field in the dielectric is 3 into 10 to the power 4 volt per meter, the charge density of the positive plate will be close to what? So we know that sigma by k epsilon naught, which is my electric field due to inside the parallel plate capacitor, has been given as 3 into 10 to the power 4. That implies sigma by using basic math I can easily find which is my third answer. Let's look at a question. A parallel plate capacitor of capacitance 90 picofarad is connected to a battery of EMF 20 volts. If a dielectric material of dielectric constant K is equal to 5 by 3 is inserted between the plates, the magnitude of the induced charge will be what? So just to make this a little clearer, this is your basic circuit, okay, and I have your parallel plate capacitor right here, and this is filled with the dielectric constant K. This is plus Q, this is minus Q. Now Q is what? Q is equal to Kc into V. Okay, nothing but 5 by 3 into 90 picofarads, right, into 20 volts that is given in the question. This turns out to be 3000 capacitance is equal to 3 times nano C, right? Now the induced charge on the dielectric is given by a formula. I'll mark this in blue, or sorry, green. You should make a note of this. The induced charge on a dielectric is equal to Q into 1 minus 1 by K. I told you that through many of the problems I'll be bringing in new formulas that you will be using. So you should take a note of this because these questions have come in the papers before. If I apply this to my question at hand, I find that Q induced for my system is equal to 1.2 NC, which is the fourth answer. Finally, let's take a look at charging and discharging of a capacitor. Firstly, let's take a look at the charging of the capacitor. We assume that the capacitor is initially uncharged. So I've made a circuit diagram for you. You have a battery that is providing the required EMF. You have a resistance and you have a capacitance in series. So there is also a switch involved that will be used. So what happens is when you start charging the capacitor, initially it has a charge 0. Okay, so you can easily draw the Kirchhoff's loop rule. Use the Kirchhoff. Okay, फिर से बोलता हूँ. Finally, let's look at charging and discharging of a capacitor, and we will look at this in two phases. Okay. Finally, let's look at charging and discharging of a capacitor. The first thing that we'll look about. Finally, let's look at charging and discharging of a capacitor. First, we focus our attention on charging. So what happens in charging is initially the capacitor is uncharged. You have it in series with a resistance and a voltage providing battery. So we can easily use the Kirchhoff's loop rules and write the net EMF voltage provided by the battery is equal to the potential drop across the capacitance and the potential drop across the resistor. So initially the switch is open, so there is nothing flowing in the circuit. as soon as I close this switch, okay, I can easily find that the current in the circuit starts to increase. So my first equation just tells me about the voltage drops, and as I can easily see that the voltage drop across a capacitor is given by Q by C. So when capacitors are connected in a circuit, the potential drop across the capacitor is equal to Q by C. Okay, so you should make a note of this. I can easily write this as I as dq by dt, and then using basic integration I can easily find that the charge in the circuit increases with time t, and I can quickly write that because the charge increases, so the rate of charge also changes, and thus I can easily write my current in the system to be equal to I naught e to the power minus t by RC. So all these equations are easily derivable from the basic Kirchhoff's loop rule that I applied. Okay, and all you should focus on is, first of all, what is the time constant. So the time constant tau is equal to R times C, has a definition of its own. So at the time constant, the charge starts to increase, and at the value of the time constant, the capacitor is 63.2% charged. Okay, this is a crucial value. I've mentioned this here in the figure as well, and multiple times questions have been asked just giving you the value of tau. Next, what you should see is the discharging of the capacitor. So in this case also there is a switch involved, and the energy that is stored in the capacitor is used to circulate current in the circuit as soon as I open the switch. So in the first cycle I close the switch and let the capacitor get charged. Okay, and then after that, in the discharging phase, what you see is the net potential drop is equal to 0. So that is why my charge decays exponentially with time. Okay, and similarly my voltage also decays exponentially with time, and you can easily find the expression for current as well. Here also my constant T is equal to tau is equal to RC is known as the time constant. At the time constant, the net charge that is remaining on the capacitor is 0.368 times the original charge. Let us take a look at another question. In the given circuit diagram, when the current reaches steady state, the charge on the capacitor of capacitance C will be given by which of these four? So let me talk about steady state. At steady state, what happens is the capacitor is fully charged, and after the capacitance is fully charged, it does not let any current pass through it. Okay, so because it does not let any current pass through it, the cord B can be assumed to be open, like an open circuit or an open switch. Not even a switch, it's completely open. Okay, so because it's open, there is no current flowing through the loop or flowing through the cord AB. Now I can easily write that the potential across AB is nothing but is equal to the potential across CD, right? Because these terminals are the same. Now I can easily write potential across AB is equal to epsilon divided by epsilon is the EMF that the battery is providing. I'll just write it as EY R plus R2 into R2, which is nothing but VCD. Okay, now if in order to find the charge on the capacitor, I can easily write C into VAB is equal to the charge on the capacitor. Okay, that implies charge is equal to CE R2 by R plus R2, which is the first option.